The morning sun painted the Arizona desert in shades of gold and red. Samuel Mitchell wiped sweat from his forehead as he guided his horse along the rocky trail. He had been tracking stolen cattle for 3 days, following hoof prints that led deeper into Apache territory than any sensible man should go. Samuel was different from most settlers. He spoke some Apache words, learned during peaceful trading sessions before the troubles started. His father had taught him to respect all people, regardless of their skin color or tribe. This respect had kept him alive when other men might have died. The tracks led to a hidden canyon where water trickled down smooth red rocks. Samuel dismounted quietly, leaving his horse tied to a mesquite bush. He moved carefully through the shadows, following the sound of flowing water. What he saw next would change 2 lives forever. A young Apache woman knelt by the water's edge, her long black hair falling like a curtain around her shoulders. She wore traditional buckskin clothing decorated with blue and white beads. But something was wrong. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs, and red marks on her wrists showed she had recently been bound. Samuel had seen enough violence to recognize the signs. This woman had escaped from something terrible. She looked up suddenly, dark eyes wide with fear. For a moment, neither moved. Samuel slowly raised his hands to show he carried no weapon. "I will not hurt you," he said in broken Apache words. The woman stood quickly, water dripping from her hands. She was beautiful, with high cheekbones and intelligent eyes that seemed to look straight through him. But those eyes held pain that made Samuel's chest tighten. "You should not be here, white man," she said in perfect English, surprising him. "This place will bring you death." "My name is Samuel. I am looking for stolen cattle, nothing more." He kept his voice gentle. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" The woman laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "Help? From a white man? You do not understand what you have done by finding me here." "What do you mean?" She began pacing like a caged mountain lion, her moccasined feet silent on the rocky ground. "My name is Ayanna. It means eternal blossom in my language. But I am no longer a blossom. I am ruined, and now you have seen me." Samuel felt confused. "I don't understand. What have I seen?" Ayanna stopped pacing and stared at him with those penetrating dark eyes. "You have seen me alone, without family or husband to protect me. You have seen me with torn clothes and marks on my skin. You have seen me as I am, a woman who has lost her honor." The weight of her words hit Samuel like a physical blow. In Apache culture, as in many cultures of that time, a woman alone with evidence of violence could face terrible consequences. People might think she had been willing, or that she had somehow brought shame to herself and her family. "Who did this to you?" Samuel asked, his hands clenching into fists. "3 white soldiers found me gathering medicine plants near the fort. They said Apache women were fair game now that we are at war." Her voice stayed steady, but Samuel saw the tremor in her hands. "I fought them. I escaped. But not before." She did not need to finish. Samuel understood. "Have you told your family?" Ayanna's laugh was bitter. "My family? My father is a respected war chief. My brother leads young warriors against the white soldiers. If they knew what happened, they would kill you just for seeing me this way. They would think you were one of the soldiers who attacked me. But I wasn't. I had nothing to do with what happened to you. It does not matter what is true. It only matters what people believe." Ayanna sat down on a large boulder, suddenly looking very tired. "In my tribe, a woman who has been damaged brings shame to her family. Some would say I should have died fighting rather than live with dishonor." Samuel felt anger rising in his chest, not at Ayanna, but at the cruel unfairness of it all. "That's not right. You survived. You fought back. You should be honored for your courage." "You think like a white man," Ayanna said sadly. "In your world, maybe things are different. But in my world, in this world where Apache and white people are killing each other, there is no place for a woman like me. There has to be something you can do." Ayanna looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing his words, his character, his soul. Something in her expression changed, becoming desperate and determined at the same time. "There is one thing," she said slowly, "but it is impossible. Tell me." She stood up and walked closer to him. Samuel could smell the desert sage in her hair, could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. In Apache law, a woman who is married cannot be questioned about her honor. A husband's protection covers all past shame. If I had a husband, no one could condemn me for what those soldiers did. No one could call me ruined or dishonored. Samuel waited, sensing there was more. "But no Apache man will take me now. They will guess what happened when they see me like this, alone and marked. And even if one would have me, my family would demand to know where I have been, what happened to me. The questions would never end." "So what's the solution?" Ayanna took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her words came out in a rush, as if she had to say them quickly before her courage failed. "You could marry me." Samuel's mouth fell open. Of all the things he had expected her to say, this was not one of them. "You're joking," he said finally. "I have never been more serious in my life." Ayanna's eyes blazed with fierce intensity. "Listen to me, Samuel Mitchell. Yes, I know your name. You are known among my people as an honest trader. Listen carefully. If you marry me now, today, by Apache custom, then I am protected. No one can question my honor or my past. I become your responsibility, not my family's shame." "But we barely know each other. Marriage is survival," Ayanna interrupted. "For me, it is the difference between life and death. Not just my life. If my family discovers what happened, they will torture and kill any white man they find, thinking he might be one of the soldiers who hurt me. Innocent men will die because of my shame." Samuel felt the world spinning around him. An hour ago, he had been a simple rancher tracking stolen cattle. Now he was being asked to marry a woman he had just met to save her life and possibly the lives of other innocent people. "How do I know this isn't some kind of trap?" he asked, hating himself for the suspicion but needing to voice it. Ayanna's face hardened. "Look at me, Samuel Mitchell. Look at these marks on my wrists. Look at my torn dress, my dirty face, my frightened eyes. Do you think I would do this to myself to trap one white rancher? Do you think I would give up my life as a free Apache woman to trick you?" Samuel looked, really looked, and saw the truth in every line of her face, every mark on her skin. This woman had been through hell and was now offering the only solution she could think of to protect both of them. "What would this marriage mean?" he asked quietly. "By Apache law, once we are wed, you become my protector. I become your responsibility. We would have to live as husband and wife, at least in appearance. You would have to take me away from this place, away from my people, so that no one can question our story." "And what story would that be?" Ayanna had clearly thought this through. "That we met and fell in love. That we married in secret because we knew both our people would disapprove. That we are running away together to start a new life. A white man and an Apache woman? People will never believe we fell in love. Some will believe it. Enough will believe it. And once we are married, it will not matter what they believe. In both white law and Apache law, a husband's protection cannot be questioned." Samuel walked to the edge of the water and stared at his reflection. He was 32 years old, had never been married, and owned a small but successful ranch. He had always planned to find love eventually, to marry a nice woman and raise a family. But this was not about love. This was about survival, about honor, about doing what was right. "If I agree to this," he said without turning around, What happens to us afterward? Do we stay married? Do we live together? Do we try to make it real? I do not know, Ayanna answered honestly. I only know that without marriage I am a dead woman. With it, we both might live. Samuel turned back to face her. How would we do it? Apache marriage ceremony? It can be simple. In Apache tradition, if a man and woman exchange gifts and speak vows before witnesses, they are married. The spirits of this canyon can be our witnesses. What kind of gifts? Ayanna untied a small leather pouch from her belt. Inside was a beautiful turquoise stone carved into the shape of a bird. This was my grandmother's. It is all I have of value. Samuel reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a silver pocket watch, a gift from his father. This was my father's. It's the most precious thing I own. They stood looking at each other, holding their most treasured possessions, about to bind their lives together. Are you sure about this? Samuel asked one more time. Ayanna's voice was steady and strong. I am sure that I want to live. I am sure that you are a good man. I am sure that this is our only chance. Samuel nodded slowly. Then let's do it. They knelt beside the flowing water, placing their gifts between them. Ayanna began speaking in Apache, her voice carrying across the canyon walls. Samuel didn't understand all the words, but he caught enough to know she was calling on the spirits to witness their union. When she finished, she looked at him expectantly. I, Samuel Mitchell, take you, Ayanna, as my wife, he said simply. I promise to protect you, to honor you, and to never let harm come to you again. Ayanna's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. I, Ayanna, take you, Samuel Mitchell, as my husband. I promise to be faithful to you, to bring honor to your name, and to never forget that you saved my life this day. They exchanged gifts. Samuel's watch felt heavy in Ayanna's small hands. Her turquoise bird seemed to glow with inner light in his palm. It is done, Ayanna whispered. And in that moment, everything changed. Samuel was no longer a bachelor rancher. Ayanna was no longer a dishonored woman. They were husband and wife, bound by necessity, protected by law, and facing an uncertain future together. What do we do now? Samuel asked. Now we leave this place. We go to your ranch and begin the hardest part, learning to live as man and wife. Samuel helped Ayanna onto his horse, then swung up behind her. As they rode away from the hidden canyon, he felt her tense body gradually relax against him. For the first time since he had found her, she felt safe. But Samuel knew their troubles were just beginning. They would have to convince his neighbors, her people, and themselves that their marriage was real. They would have to learn to trust each other, to work together, to build a life from nothing but desperate hope. And somewhere in the back of Samuel's mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, something real could grow from this desperate beginning. Maybe two people forced together by circumstances could find something worth keeping. Only time would tell if their marriage of necessity could become something more. As they rode toward Samuel's ranch, neither spoke. Both were lost in their own thoughts, wondering what they had just done and whether they would survive what came next. Behind them, the desert wind erased their tracks, as if the canyon had never witnessed their desperate wedding. Ahead of them lay a world that would test their hastily made vows in ways neither could imagine. But they rode forward together, husband and wife, protector and protected, carrying each other's most precious possessions and hoping against hope that they had made the right choice. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of morning, as two unlikely partners began their journey toward an uncertain future. The Mitchell Ranch sat in a valley surrounded by red mesas and scattered oak trees. Samuel had built it with his own hands over the past 10 years, starting with a simple cabin and gradually adding a barn, corrals, and pastures for his cattle. It wasn't much to look at, but it was honest work and honest living. As they crested the hill overlooking his property, Samuel felt Ayanna stiffen behind him. "It's smaller than I expected," she said quietly. "It's not much, but it's ours now," Samuel replied, then caught himself. The word ours felt strange on his tongue. Everything was happening so fast. They rode down the slope in silence. Samuel's nearest neighbor, Tom Bradley, was mending fence near the property line. Tom looked up as they approached, his weathered face creasing into a frown when he saw Ayanna. "Samuel!" Tom called out, walking toward them with long strides. "Where you been, boy? Your cattle been wandering all over creation." Samuel dismounted and helped Ayanna down from the horse. She stood close beside him, her head held high despite the obvious fear in her eyes. "Tom, I'd like you to meet my wife," Samuel said, trying to sound casual. "Ayanna Mitchell." Tom's jaw dropped. His eyes moved from Samuel to Ayanna and back again, taking in her Apache features, her traditional clothing, her proud bearing. "You're what now?" Tom sputtered. "My wife. We were married yesterday." Tom's face went through several shades of red before settling on purple. "Samuel Mitchell, have you lost your mind? She's an Apache." "We're at war with the Apache." "Not all Apache are at war," Samuel said firmly. "And Ayanna is my wife now. I'd appreciate you treating her with respect." Tom spat in the dust. "Respect? Boy, you've gone and married yourself a savage. What's your pa gonna say when he hears about this? What's the whole territory gonna say?" Samuel felt his temper rising, but Ayanna placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let him speak," she said quietly. "His words cannot hurt me." But Tom wasn't finished. "You think you're the first white man to be fooled by a pretty face? These Apache women, they'll slit your throat soon as look at you. Mark my words, Samuel. You'll wake up one morning with your scalp missing and your cattle stolen." "That's enough," Samuel said, his voice hard as iron. "Ayanna is my wife, and I won't have you talking about her like that." Tom shook his head in disgust. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, boy. When this all goes bad, and it will go bad, don't come crying to me." He stomped away, leaving Samuel and Ayanna standing alone in the dusty yard. "He will tell everyone," Ayanna said matter-of-factly. "Let him. We knew this wouldn't be easy." But as they walked toward the cabin, Samuel felt the weight of what they had done settling on his shoulders. Tom Bradley was just the first. Soon the whole territory would know that Samuel Mitchell had married an Apache woman. The cabin was simple but clean: 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and a small kitchen area. Samuel had always kept it neat, being a bachelor with simple needs. But looking at it through Ayanna's eyes, he saw how sparse and lonely it appeared. "It's not much," he said apologetically. "It is fine," Ayanna replied, but she wrapped her arms around herself as if she were cold. They stood awkwardly in the main room, neither knowing quite what to do next. The reality of their situation was settling in. They were strangers, bound by necessity, trying to figure out how to live together. "Are you hungry?" Samuel asked finally. "A little." Samuel moved toward the kitchen, grateful for something practical to do. "I've got beans, some salt pork, and biscuits from yesterday." Ayanna followed him, watching as he worked. "In my tribe, cooking is women's work." "Well, I've been doing my own cooking for 10 years. I'm not great at it, but we won't starve." "May I help?" Samuel handed her a knife and some onions. As she began chopping with quick, efficient movements, he noticed how her hands shook slightly. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Ayanna paused in her work. "I keep thinking they will find me. The soldiers. My family. Someone. My ranch is on the edge of the territory. Not many people come through here uninvited. And if they do? Samuel met her eyes steadily. Then they'll have to go through me to get to you. Something in his voice seemed to reassure her. Her hand stopped shaking as she continued preparing the food. They ate in relative silence, the awkwardness still thick between them. Every now and then, Samuel would catch Ayanna looking around the cabin with an unreadable expression. "What are you thinking?" he asked finally. "I am thinking that yesterday morning I was gathering medicine plants for my grandmother. Tonight I am sitting in a white man's house, married to a stranger eating his food." She shook her head. "Life changes so quickly. Do you regret it?" Ayanna considered the question seriously. "I regret what happened to me. I regret that marriage was my only choice, but I do not regret choosing you." "Why?" "Because you could have ridden away when you found me. You could have pretended you never saw me. Instead, you listened to my desperate plan and agreed to help a stranger. Any decent man would have done the same." "No," Ayanna said firmly. "Any decent man would have felt sorry for me. You did something more. You acted." That night, they faced their first real challenge as a married couple. Samuel had only one bed. "I can sleep on the floor," he offered, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "That is foolish. We are married now. People will expect us to share a bed." "But we barely know each other." Ayanna looked at him with those penetrating dark eyes. "Samuel, we are not children. We both understand that this marriage was born from necessity, not love. But if we are to make this work, we must be practical." She was right, but that didn't make it any less awkward. They worked out a system. Samuel would change clothes in the main room while Ayanna used the bedroom. Then they would lie down with careful space between them. In the darkness, Samuel listened to Ayanna's breathing, wondering what she was thinking, whether she was afraid, whether she was planning to run away in the night. "Samuel?" Her voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes." "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me back my honor. For making me feel human again." Samuel felt something twist in his chest. "You never stopped being human, Ayanna. What those soldiers did, that wasn't your fault. My people would not see it that way." "Then your people are wrong?" There was a long pause before she spoke again. "You are not what I expected from a white man." "What did you expect?" "Cruelty, selfishness, the desire to take whatever you wanted." She was quiet for a moment. "Instead, I found kindness." Samuel didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. But something warm settled in his chest, and for the first time since this all began, he felt like maybe they had made the right choice. The next few days fell into a routine. Samuel tended his cattle, while Ayanna explored the ranch, learning about her new home. She was fascinated by his vegetable garden and offered to help tend it using Apache knowledge of desert plants. "This corn will grow better if you plant beans nearby," she told him, kneeling in the dirt. "My grandmother taught me that beans feed the soil." Samuel watched her work, noting how her shoulders had lost some of their tension, how she moved with more confidence around the ranch. But he also noticed how she froze whenever they heard hoofbeats approaching, how she always positioned herself near an escape route. On the fourth day, their peace was shattered. Samuel was shoeing a horse when he heard riders approaching fast. He looked up to see 6 Apache warriors cresting the hill, their faces painted for war, weapons ready. "Ayanna!" he called out, but she was already running toward him from the garden. "It is my brother," she whispered, her face gone pale. "Red Hawk." The warriors rode into the yard and dismounted in a cloud of dust. Their leader was a tall, powerfully built man with fierce eyes and intricate war paint covering half his face. He looked enough like Ayanna that Samuel didn't need to be told this was her brother. Red Hawk spoke rapidly in Apache, his voice harsh with anger. Ayanna responded in the same language, her tone urgent and pleading. "What's he saying?" Samuel asked quietly. "He says I have brought dishonor to our family by disappearing. He says our father is sick with worry. He demands to know where I have been." Red Hawk's eyes moved to Samuel, and the hatred there was unmistakable. He barked another question at Ayanna. "He wants to know if you are the one who hurt me," Ayanna translated, her voice barely audible. Samuel stepped forward, his hands visible but ready. "Tell him I am your husband. Tell him I have never hurt you and never will." Ayanna spoke again in Apache. Red Hawk's reaction was explosive. He shouted something that made all the warriors reach for their weapons. "What did he say?" "He says no Apache woman would willingly marry a white man. He says you must have forced me or tricked me." The situation was balanced on a knife's edge. Samuel could feel the tension radiating from the Apache warriors. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and blood would flow. But then Ayanna did something that surprised everyone. She walked to stand directly in front of her brother and spoke in a clear, carrying voice that needed no translation. She was defending Samuel, defending their marriage. Red Hawk listened with growing amazement. When she finished, he stared at her for a long moment, then asked a single quiet question. Ayanna lifted her chin proudly and gave a firm answer. Red Hawk's expression changed completely. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. "What did you tell him?" Samuel asked. "I told him that you saved my life, that you married me to protect my honor, that you are a good man who has shown me kindness when I needed it most." "And his question?" Ayanna hesitated. "He asked if I wanted to come home with him." "What did you say?" "I said that my home is with my husband now." Red Hawk spoke again, this time to Samuel directly, though he used Apache words. "He says," Ayanna translated slowly, "he says that if you ever hurt me, he will hunt you to the ends of the earth and make you beg for death." Samuel met Red Hawk's fierce gaze steadily. "Tell him I understand, and tell him that I give him my word. I will protect her with my life." Ayanna translated. Red Hawk nodded once, sharply. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into a leather bag tied to his horse and pulled out a beautiful Apache blanket, woven in patterns of red and black and white. He handed it to Ayanna, speaking softly in their native language. Tears ran down Ayanna's face as she accepted the blanket. "It was our mother's," she whispered to Samuel. "He says it is a wedding gift, so that I will not forget who I am." Red Hawk mounted his horse and spoke one final time to his sister. "He says to remember that I will always have a place with our people if I need it," Ayanna translated. "But he also says that he can see I have chosen well." The Apache warriors rode away as quickly as they had come, leaving Samuel and Ayanna standing in their dusty yard, holding the wedding blanket. "That went better than I expected," Samuel said finally. "My brother is a good man, even if he is fierce in war. He sees that you are honorable." "What happens now?" Ayanna looked down at the blanket in her hands, then up at Samuel's face. "Now we continue learning to be married." That night, they sat by the fireplace, the Apache blanket draped across their shoulders. It was the first time they had voluntarily touched since their wedding day. "Do you miss your old life?" Samuel asked. "Every day. But I am beginning to think that maybe loss can become something else, given time." "What do you mean?" Ayanna was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I mean that maybe we can build something good from this desperate beginning. Maybe two people who married for survival can find reasons to stay together beyond necessity." Samuel felt that warm sensation in his chest again. "I'd like that." "So would I." They sat in comfortable silence, sharing the blanket and the warmth of the fire. Outside, the desert wind howled through the canyons. But inside the cabin, two people who had been strangers a week ago were slowly becoming something more. They were becoming partners. They were becoming friends. And maybe, just maybe, they were becoming something even deeper. But their greatest challenges still lay ahead. 2 months after their desperate wedding in the hidden canyon, Samuel and Ayanna had settled into a rhythm of married life. The awkwardness had faded, replaced by a partnership that grew stronger each day. They worked side by side, tending the ranch, shared meals and conversations, and slept in the same bed with the natural ease of people who had learned to trust each other. But their peace was about to be shattered. Samuel was repairing a fence post when he saw dust clouds approaching from the south. Not the quick, purposeful dust of Apache riders, but the slower, heavier cloud of a large group moving with military precision. "Ayanna!" he called out. She emerged from the cabin where she had been grinding corn, her hands still dusted with meal. One look at Samuel's face told her something was wrong. "What is it?" "Soldiers coming. A lot of them." Ayanna's face went pale. They both knew what this might mean. The army had been conducting sweeps through Apache territory, looking for hostile bands. But they were also looking for the 3 soldiers who had attacked Ayanna. The men had been reported missing, and the army was asking questions. "How many?" Ayanna asked, already moving toward the house. 20, maybe more. Too many to fight. Too many to hide from. Samuel caught her arm gently. "We stick to our story. We're newlyweds. We met, fell in love, got married. Nothing more." Ayanna nodded, but he could see the fear in her eyes. They both knew that some men in the army wouldn't care about the truth if they decided an Apache woman was a convenient scapegoat. The soldiers rode into the yard in formation, their blue uniforms dusty from travel. Their leader was a captain with cold eyes and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. "Mitchell!" the captain called out. "That's me," Samuel replied, stepping forward with his hands visible. "Captain Morrison, 3rd Cavalry. This your ranch?" "Yes, sir." The captain's eyes moved to Ayanna, who stood on the porch with her chin raised proudly despite her obvious fear. "And this is?" "My wife, Ayanna Mitchell. Your wife." The captain's tone made it clear what he thought of that claim. "Apache?" "Yes, sir, but she's not involved in any hostilities. She's been with me for months." Captain Morrison dismounted and walked closer, his spurs jingling with each step. "We're looking for information about 3 soldiers who went missing in this area 6 weeks ago. Private Johnson, Private Williams, and Corporal Hayes. You seen them?" Samuel felt his heart hammering, but he kept his voice steady. "No, sir. Haven't seen any soldiers until today." "What about you?" Morrison asked Ayanna directly. "You see any soldiers?" Before Ayanna could answer, Samuel stepped between them. "My wife doesn't speak much English, Captain, and she hasn't been off the ranch in weeks." Morrison's eyes narrowed. "She looks like she understands plenty to me." He moved around Samuel to face Ayanna directly. "Where are you from, woman?" Ayanna looked the captain straight in the eye. "I am from the desert," she said in clear English. "But now my home is with my husband." "Which band?" "No band. I left my people to marry Samuel." Morrison studied her face carefully. "You know, we found some interesting things near where those soldiers disappeared. Apache arrows, signs of a struggle. And witnesses say a young Apache woman was seen in the area around that time." Samuel felt ice forming in his stomach. "Captain, I can vouch for my wife. She's been here with me. Can you now?" Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "How long you been married, Mitchell?" 2 months. "Where did you meet this wife of yours?" Samuel had prepared for this question. "Trading post over in Red Rock. Her family had come in to trade, and we took to each other." "Love at first sight?" Morrison's tone was mocking. "Something like that." Morrison walked in a slow circle around them like a predator sizing up prey. You know what I think happened to those soldiers, Mitchell? I think they ran into some Apache, maybe had themselves a little fun with an Apache woman, and then got killed for their trouble. I think maybe this woman here knows all about it. You're wrong, Samuel said firmly. Am I? Let me paint you a different picture. What if this woman here was involved in killing those soldiers? What if she came to you for protection, and you, being a fool for a pretty face, decided to help her? Ayanna spoke up, her voice steady despite the danger. Captain Morrison, I have killed no one. I am a peaceful woman who wishes only to live quietly with her husband. Peaceful woman? Morrison laughed harshly. Apache women cut the throats of sleeping men. They torture prisoners. They're as savage as their menfolk. Samuel felt anger rising in his chest. Captain, you're talking about my wife. I'm talking about a potential murderer. Then you better have proof before you make accusations. Morrison's hand moved to rest on his pistol grip. Proof? How about this? We found tracks leading away from where those soldiers died. Tracks leading in this direction. Samuel's heart sank, but he kept his expression neutral. Lot of people travel these trails, Captain. Not many Apache women traveling alone. Morrison stepped closer to Ayanna. I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want the truth. What do you know about those 3 soldiers? Ayanna looked at Samuel, then back at the captain. For a moment, Samuel thought she was going to confess everything. Instead, she did something that took incredible courage. I know that 3 soldiers attacked an innocent woman near the fort 6 weeks ago, she said clearly. I know that she fought back and escaped. I know that those soldiers got what they deserved. The soldiers behind Morrison shifted restlessly, hands moving to their weapons. Are you confessing to murder? Morrison asked quietly. I am confessing to surviving, Ayanna replied. The truth hung in the air like smoke from a gunfire. Morrison's face went red with rage. Sergeant, he barked, arrest this woman for the murder of 3 United States soldiers. Captain, wait, Samuel said desperately. You can't prove she killed anyone. You only have suspicion. I have enough. A dead Apache woman can't kill any more soldiers. But as the sergeant moved toward Ayanna, a new voice cut through the tension. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Captain. Everyone turned to see Tom Bradley riding into the yard, followed by 5 other ranchers. Samuel had never been so happy to see his gruff neighbor. This is military business, Bradley, Morrison snapped. This is my neighbor's business, which makes it my business. Tom dismounted and walked over to stand beside Samuel. You got a warrant for this woman's arrest? I don't need a warrant to arrest a hostile Apache. She ain't hostile. She's married to a white man living peaceful on a white man's ranch. That makes her a citizen's wife, not a hostile. The law doesn't recognize Apache marriages. But it recognizes Christian marriages, said another voice. Samuel turned in amazement to see Reverend Parker, the traveling minister who served the scattered ranch communities, riding into the yard with his black coat flapping. Reverend, Morrison said warily, this doesn't concern you. Marriage is always my concern, Captain, especially when I'm the one who performed the ceremony. Reverend Parker dismounted and walked over to join the growing group around Samuel and Ayanna. Samuel stared at the minister in confusion. They had never met. Reverend Parker winked at Samuel, then turned to face the captain. I married Samuel Mitchell and Ayanna in a proper Christian ceremony 2 months ago. I have the documentation right here. He pulled out an official-looking paper from his coat pocket. Samuel caught a glimpse of it. It was a legitimate marriage certificate, freshly filled out. This woman is a lawfully wedded wife under territorial law, the Reverend continued. You can't arrest her without proper evidence and a proper warrant. Morrison's face was turning purple with rage. You people are interfering with military justice. We're protecting our neighbors, Tom Bradley said firmly. Something wrong with that? Samuel looked around in amazement. Tom Bradley, who had called him a fool for marrying Ayanna, Reverend Parker, who they had never even met, 5 other ranchers who barely knew them, all standing together against the military to protect an Apache woman. Why? He whispered to Tom. Tom's weathered face softened slightly. Because I've been watching you two these past months. I see how she tends that garden, how she helps with the cattle, how she looks at you like you hung the moon. I was wrong about her, Samuel. She ain't no savage. She's a good woman who's found herself a good man. Captain Morrison looked around at the determined faces surrounding him. His hand was still on his pistol, but he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. This isn't over, he said finally. If I find proof she was involved in those soldiers' deaths, I'll be back. If you find proof, we'll listen, Reverend Parker said calmly. But until then, leave this family in peace. Morrison remounted his horse with stiff, angry movements. Move out, he barked to his men. The soldiers rode away in a cloud of dust and frustration, leaving Samuel and Ayanna standing in their yard surrounded by their unexpected defenders. I don't understand, Samuel said to Reverend Parker. Why did you help us? The minister smiled. Because Tom Bradley rode 20 miles to tell me that Samuel Mitchell needed a marriage certificate backdated 2 months, and that if I didn't help, an innocent woman might hang. Samuel looked at Tom in amazement. You did that? Tom shrugged, embarrassed. Told you I was wrong about her. Man's got a right to change his mind. Ayanna stepped forward and, to everyone's surprise, placed her hands on Tom's shoulders in the Apache gesture of deep respect. Thank you, she said simply. You have saved my life. Tom's face turned red, but he smiled. Well, you make good cornbread, and you've made Samuel happier than I've seen him in years. That's worth something. One by one, the ranchers came forward to shake Samuel's hand and nod respectfully to Ayanna. They were accepting her as one of their own. After everyone had left, Samuel and Ayanna sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and red. We did it, Samuel said quietly. Did what? We made it real. Our marriage, our life together. It's not just about survival anymore. Ayanna leaned against his shoulder, solid and warm. When did you know? Know what? When did you know that you loved me? Samuel thought about it. I think it was the day you convinced that stubborn cow to come out of the creek. You talked to her in Apache, and she followed you like a pet dog. I realized I'd never seen anything more beautiful in my life. Ayanna laughed. I knew I loved you the night you brought me soup when I was sick. You sat by the bed all night checking my fever. Even though you could have caught whatever I had. When did we stop being strangers pretending to be married? Samuel asked. When we started being married people who happened to love each other. Samuel took her hand, the turquoise bird she had given him at their desperate wedding, now hanging on a chain around his neck, right next to his heart. Do you ever regret it? The way we started? Ayanna considered the question seriously. I regret what those soldiers did to me. I regret the fear and pain that brought me to that canyon. But I do not regret what came after. Sometimes the worst things in life lead to the best things. Even if people will always whisper about us, about how an Apache woman married a white rancher, let them whisper. We know the truth. We know that what began in desperation has become something beautiful. Samuel kissed her forehead, tasting the salt of desert wind in her hair. What do you think the future holds for us? Children, maybe. A bigger house, more cattle, peaceful years together. And if the war between your people and mine gets worse, then we'll face it together, as husband and wife, as partners. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, and Ayanna answered with a soft Apache lullaby. "What does that song mean?" Samuel asked. "It's a prayer of thanksgiving, for safe journeys, for new beginnings, for love found in unexpected places." "Sing it again." Ayanna's voice rose into the desert night, carrying their gratitude to the stars. Samuel closed his eyes and listened, thinking about the strange path that had brought them together. A desperate woman, a compassionate man, a marriage born from necessity, and somehow, against all odds, love. The next morning, Samuel woke to find Ayanna already up, standing at the window watching the sunrise. She was wearing one of his shirts over her traditional skirt, and her hair fell loose around her shoulders. "Good morning, Mrs. Mitchell," he said softly. She turned and smiled, and Samuel's heart did the same little flip it had been doing for weeks now whenever she looked at him like that. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. Are you ready for another day of being married?" "With you? I'm ready for a lifetime of days." Ayanna crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed beside him. "Samuel, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I am with child." Samuel sat up quickly, his eyes wide. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." A slow smile spread across Samuel's face. "A baby. Are you happy?" "Happy? Ayanna, I'm—" He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I'm the happiest man in Arizona territory. Even though people will say terrible things about our child, about a half-Apache baby." Samuel's arms tightened around her. "Our child will be loved and protected and raised to be proud of both sides of their heritage, and anyone who has a problem with that will have to answer to me." "And to me," Ayanna added fiercely, "and to Uncle Tom and Reverend Parker, and all the other people who have become our family." Samuel laughed. "Uncle Tom? He brought me seeds for my garden yesterday, and he asked me to teach him some Apache words. I think he has adopted us." "God help us all," Samuel said, but he was smiling. They held each other as the morning sun filled their bedroom with golden light. Outside, the desert was waking up, birds singing, cattle lowing, the sounds of life continuing. Their desperate wedding in a hidden canyon had become something neither of them had dared to hope for. They had found love, family, and a future together. And as Ayanna placed Samuel's hand on her still flat belly where their child was growing, they both knew that their greatest adventure was just beginning. The Apache woman who had once begged for marriage as protection had found something far more precious. She had found home. And the rancher who had married a stranger to save her life had discovered that sometimes the most desperate choices lead to the most beautiful destinations. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would build a life that honored both their cultures. Together, they would raise children who would bridge two worlds. Their love story had begun with the words, "You saw me as I am? Our only protection is marriage, or they'll condemn us." But it would continue with new words, "I love you as you are, and together we are stronger than any condemnation." And in the end, that made all the difference.